EIDR, or the Entertainment Identifier Registry, is a global unique identifier system for a broad array of audio-visual objects, including motion pictures, television, and radio programs. The identification system resolves an identifier to a metadata record that is associated with top-level titles, edits, DVDs, encodings, clips, and mash-ups. EIDR also provides identifiers for video service providers, such as broadcast and cable networks. As of late 2015, EIDR contains over 827K content assets, including 143K movies, and 387K episodes of over 24K TV series. EIDR is an implementation of a digital object identifier. History. Media asset identification systems have existed for decades. The common motivation for the creation is to enable the management of media assets through the assignment of a unique ID to a set of metadata, representing salient characteristics of each asset. Over time, such systems tend to proliferate, with each arising to deal with a specific set of issues. As a result, there is considerable variation between systems in terms of which assets are categorized, which metadata is associated with each asset, and the very definition of an asset. To name a few examples, should a director's cut of a movie be distinct from the original theatrical release? How should regional variations be accounted for? Further complications include the procedures for adding new assets, editing existing assets, and creating derivative assets. EIDR was created to address these issues, as well as others encountered in video asset workflows, both in a B2B context and the intramural post-production activities of content producers. EIDR has the following characteristics: a central registry available to all participants, ability to easily register new assets, an asset ID that is immutable, detection, prevention of duplicates of the same asset being created, ability to create a set of video assets derived from an abstract work, ability to group video assets by more general relationships, a core set of metadata to differentiate assets, even when closely related, scalable, immutable, persistent. EIDR is intended to supplement, not replace, existing asset identification systems. To the contrary, a key feature is to allow an EIDR record to include references to that asset's ID under other systems. This feature is particularly useful for film and television archives, making it easy for them to cross-reference the holdings with other sources for the work and metadata about it. By design, EIDR does not replicate features of other asset ID systems, e.g., commercial systems that seek to add value through enhanced metadata. It is also a non-goal to track ownership and rights information, which can, however, be implemented as applications that use the EIDR ID content model. EIDR is built on a collection of records that are stored in a central registry. These records are referenced externally by DOIs, which are assigned when a record is created, and each identifier is immutable thereafter. The identifier resolution system underlying DOIs is the handle system, and so each native EIDR content ID is a handle formatted, in increasing specificity, to handle DOI and EIDR standards. Content ID format. The canonical form of an EIDR content ID is an instance of a handle and has the format 10.5240xxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxx$ EIDR asset. The 10 indicates the handle is a DOI. Other prefixes are assigned to other asset types. The digits between the and form the sub-prefix, which indicates which registration agency within the International DOI Foundation has rights to manage these handles. 5240 is assigned to the EIDR Association. XC is the DOI suffix. Each X denotes a hexadecimal digit, and C is an ISO 7064 mod 37 6-check digit. There is also a 96-bit compact binary form that is intended for embedding in small payloads such as watermarks. This form is generated from the canonical format as follows: 16-bit sub-prefix generated by interpreting the sub-prefix as a binary value e.g. B00101011111000. 80-bit suffix, the non-checksum part of the suffix, represented as 10 bytes. The ENFM for and EIDR ID is specified in IETF RFC 7302. For use on the web, and EIDR content ID can be represented as a URI in one of these forms. https://doi.org 10.524/xxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxx́ Info DO 10.524/xxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxxx RFC 452 compliant. Info URI Record types. There are 4 types of content records, each associated with a reserved prefix. Content ID is associated with an entertainment asset such as a movie or TV series. Content records are hierarchical, allowing relationships to be expressed such as a series, whose children would be seasons, whose children in turn would be individual episodes. Many other relationships are supported, as described below. Content records form the bulk of the data in the EIDR registry. Party ID identifies entities such as registrants, content producers, and distributors. Video Service ID identifies a video service, colloquially known as a channel or network, a linear sequence of content scheduled to be broadcast at specified times. Video services are hierarchical. For example, a parent may have several children to account for regional or language variations. User ID 2 to 32 identifies a user using a string of 2 to 32 alphanumeric and selected special characters. A user is primarily an administrative concept that is subordinate to parties. Unlike the other EIDR DOIs, the user ID can only be used within EIDR. The sub-prefix is 5237, 5238, 5239, and 5240 are all assigned to the EIDR Association. Content records. Content records are objects categorized by the types and relationships. Each has 3 different kinds of type. Object type. There are a total of 10 of these. First is the basic type, which has the minimal fields necessary to describe a content record. The other 9 are derived from the basic type and contain extra fields for describing more complex objects. Structural type. These distinguish representations of a work and are listed in increasing order of specificity. Abstraction, used for objects having no reality, such as a series container of the most basic concept of the original work. This corresponds to the International Standard Musical Work Code for musical works, the International Standard Text Code for textual works, or the International Standard Audiovisual Number for audiovisual works. Performance, used for items that are particular versions of a work, such as the original theatrical release, a director's cut of a film, or a locally censored version of a TV show. This roughly corresponds to the International Standard Recording Code for musical works and to some uses of the version ISAN for audiovisual works. Digital, a particular digital representation of a work, such as an MPEG-2 encoding of a movie. This corresponds to some uses of the VSAN referent type, the type of the content asset, independent of a particular manifestation, series, an abstraction that contains ordered or unordered individual items. Season, a second level of grouping below a series, usually covering a time interval. TV, content that first appeared via broadcast. Movie, long-form content that first appeared in a theater or a cinema. Short, loosely defined to cover a work that is 40 minutes or less, such as music videos, theatrical newsreels, or theatrical ADTV cartoon shorts. Web, content that first appeared on the web. This is different from content from elsewhere that has been made available on the web. Interactive material, content that is not strictly audio-visual. It covers DVD menus, interactive TV overlays, customized players, etc. Compilation content composed of multiple other assets that cannot be more precisely described, such as a box set of a film franchise. Supplemental, this type is for secondary content whose primary purpose is to support, augment, or promote other content. Examples include trailers, outtakes, and promotion documentaries. Basic metadata. The following fields comprise the base object data of a content record. Structural type, e.g., abstraction. Mode, e.g., audio-visual, audio for a radio program, visual for a silent work. Referent type, e.g., movie. Title, the primary title. Titles and alternate titles are further distinguished by lang, the language of the title expressed as ISO 639-1 code. Class, release or regional. Alternate title 1, n, one or more alternate titles. Original language, the language of the original release expressed as ISO 639-1 code. Associated org1, n, party ID of producer, studio, etc. Release date. Date title was originally released. Country of origin, ISO 3166-1 Alpha 2 code, with extensions for defunct countries. Approximate length, expressed as XML schema XS. Duration data type. Alternate ID 1, n, one or more equivalent IDs expressed in a different asset ID system. Credits. Only skeletal credits are provided, typically restricted to the director and up to 4 of the main actors. As noted, it is a non-goal for EIDR to compete with proprietary systems with rich metadata. The main goal is to assist with disambiguating the title and helping with validation and deduplication efforts. Registrant, the party that created this content record. Creation date. Date this content record was created. Status, normally valid. Last modification date. Last time this content record was changed. Deleted content records. An EIDR ID must be always resolvable, thus under normal circumstances the corresponding content record will be permanent. There are 2 mechanisms available to deal with errors or other unusual circumstances. The preferred one is aliasing, whereby an EIDR ID is transparently redirected to another content record. Aliasing is commonly employed to deal with an asset being registered twice. The other mechanism is the use of tombstone records. This is employed when the content record is corrupted, or an otherwise invalid asset was accidentally registered. In this case, the ID will be aliased to a special tombstone record. The tombstone can be recognized by applications because its EIDR ID field will be set to the distinguished value 10.5240000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000. Note that X means the 24th letter of the Latin alphabet. Alternate ID. Having a rich set of alternate IDs for content is one of the primary goals of EIDR. This allows EIDR IDs to be used everywhere in content workflows. If an alternate ID is needed, it can be found in the metadata for the EIDR ID. EIDR supports the inclusion both proprietary and other standard ID references. Additional alternate IDs can be added when needed. Below is an example of alternate IDs for the EIDR asset 10.524EA7379D71B2BB3783A73M. If an alternate ID is resolvable algorithmically, for example by placing it appropriately in a template URL, EIDR makes that link available. Alternate IDs are partitioned into non-proprietary and proprietary. The former have distinguished, predefined types, whereas proprietary IDs are all of type proprietary, and are further distinguished by an associated DNS domain. Relationships between objects. Content objects can be related to each other according to the following table. These relations are expressed as additional fields in the content record and thus relative to that object. Note that the subject object is the child and the target is the parent. Additional constraints are noted in the table. Use in standards and AMP applications. Used in standards and AMP applications, EIDR has been incorporated into many standards. A few of the more significant ones are listed here. SMPTE, AMWA, SMPTE Recommended Practice RP 2079 standardizes use of EIDR in MXF media containers, at the heart of professional content workflows, including AMWA AS03 and his 11 specifications. SMTPE Recommended Practice 2021-5 allows an EIDR identifier to be carried wherever BXF is used for exchange of data among broadcast systems. European Broadcasting Union (EBUCOR) is a common core set of descriptive and technical metadata that describe media resources. EBU and EIDR staff have produced a mapping of EBUCOR for base records to EIDR root objects. EIDR and EBU are working together in the SMPTE core working group to define descriptive metadata for SMPTE-based specifications and workflows. EIDR is one of the standards supported by the EBU core. DVB EIDR is referenced in draft DVB specifications for companion screens. MPEG EIDR has been proposed as a content identifier in the multimedia preservation application format that is being defined for archival use. Cable Labs EIDR is part of the Cable Labs metadata standard for the distribution of video and demand assets. EIDR is one program identifier that can be present in an SCTE 35 2013 segmentation descriptor, a standard used in IP distribution over cable. EIDR is also used in dynamic ad insertion products using the SCTE 130 standard architecture. EIDR and alternate IDs. In order to promote interoperability of EIDR with a wide variety of systems, EIDR includes an alternate ID field to cross-reference existing IDs systems. Alternate IDs may include, for example, CRID, ISAN, ISRC, UPC, or URI, as well as commercial ID systems such as AD ID, Baseline, IMDb, etc. etc. Currently, about half of the IDR records carry an ID from at least one other system. Mapping from other standard metadata and identifiers to EIDR. Other metadata and identifier systems can be directly mapped into EIDR. N15907 and N15744. These standards are under the auspices of the European Committee for Standardization (CEN), TC 372 and Film Standards, org. Best practices and mappings are available for N15907 and N15744 root objects. EIDR is also working with film archives to extend interoperability with these standards to a more granular level of detail, including a project with the British Film Institute to register their N15907 based records with EIDR. International Standard Audio-Visual Number (ISAN) is widely used in rights management and collection systems. A complete mapping of an ISAN registration to an EIDR registration is available. The UK Audio-Visual Registration Agency, a joint venture between EIDR and ISAN UK, provides joint registration services for both identifiers. Precursors to this service have been used to obtain EIDR IDs and ISANs for broadcast content from ITV. EIDR identifiers have found the way into an increasing number of commercial applications. The following are illustrative of some of the advantages of using EIDR. Warner Bros. Xbox integration. EIDR was used to improve the implementation of an electronic sell-through system for delivering Warner theatrical titles to Microsoft Xbox Live customers. The operation of an electronic storefront requires several groups within Warner Bros. To coordinate their activities with the Xbox team. The outbound side of the distribution chain included publishing avails and tracking order fulfillment. The inbound side included placing orders. Other functions such as reports spanned both sides of the distribution chain. The original system required manual intervention and supervision, particularly at boundaries between organizations. An example of the need for manual processing would be verifying that the correct version of an asset was delivered. In the new system, Warner Bros. Created a new EIDR ID for each content variant, and these were used for all subsequent processing stages. This eliminated ambiguity and facilitated the automation of the inbound-outbound stages. Another advantage was the ability to create reports on the fly. Swisscom Epg Integration. Swisscom operates a pay-TV service in Switzerland. In 2014 it completed the rollout of an electronic programming guide for its customers based on EIDR. This is an end-to-end system where EIDR IDs are used to represent the assets displayed in the EPG. A key element of the system was that EIDR IDs were also used in the guide metadata supplied to Swisscom by Media Press TV. This included setting up a system for assigning EIDR IDs to assets that were not already in the registry. A key advantage of using EIDR is not having to translate between different identifier systems. Operations and AMP Administrative. EIDR is administered by the non-profit EIDR Association, which was founded in October 2010 by Movie Labs, Cable Labs, Comcast and Rovi. Membership has grown steadily since then. As of late 2014 it has 79 members divided between the industry promoters and industry contributor levels. The fastest growing category is non-US companies, which now accounts for about 20% of membership. The EIDR Association operates two EIDR registries, Production and Sandbox. The former is the official site, and the latter is reserved for test and development. Both systems are available publicly online, but the contents of the sandbox are not guaranteed to be correct, complete, or even to refer to assets that exist. Only members of the EIDR Association may modify the registry. Registration of new assets can be done individually or in bulk. In either case, the workflow comprises a combination of automated and manual processes. It is also iterative, as the initial matching process may identify a variety of gaps and errors that need to be dealt with. Registering new assets is a complex process that requires some preparation, particularly in the case of bulk submission. The automated processes will check syntax, make sure that the basic metadata is supplied, and that any dependencies are honored. Manual steps include making sure the correct parties are associated with the asset. One of the most important steps is ensuring that a new asset does not already exist in the registry. This is covered in the next section. In order to register a new asset, a user must be associated with a party that has been granted the registrant role by the EIDR operator. A registrant may be a principal agent, such as a studio or an encoding house, but it may also be a party doing bulk registration of back catalog items, or a party acting on behalf of someone else. It is also a requirement that a registrant be an EIDR member. In general, content ownership, metadata authority, and registration capability are separate and unrelated concepts. Deduplication. This refers to flagging assets being submitted to the registry as falling into one of the following three categories. Candidate asset is unique. Candidate asset is a duplicate of an existing record. Candidate asset has a high probability of being a duplicate. This assessment is based on applying a set of rules to the candidate asset, which results in a numerical score. Bucketing occurs as the result of comparing the score to two thresholds. Low threshold. Any asset with a score below this value is deemed not to be a duplicate. This is the only case when a proposed record addition or modification will succeed. High threshold. Any asset with a score above this value is deemed to be a duplicate. The proposed record addition, modification will not proceed, and an error status will be returned. Registrants will generally use the pre-existing ID for the item they tried to register, and can add missing information and alternate IDs to the existing record. Assets falling between the low and high threshold are deemed to have a high possibility of being a duplicate. The proposed record addition, modification will not proceed until manually reviewed by EIDR operations staff.